Alright, assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Right, get some things set up. Will anybody show? Hard to tell, hard to tell. Got me a long video. Maybe if I do enough streams, they will come. They will come. Got me a coffee now. It's time to get serious now when the coffee comes out. Right. Yeah, I think we're good. I think we're all good here. Alright. Guess I'll start in a few. Let me get some of this stuff. That works. That works. There we go. There we go. There we go. Now I feel like I'm streaming. To an audience of 0, but I'm streaming anyways. Alright. I think I'm going to start. Yeah, let's go. Red Heifers and the Third Temple. Let's see what this video is all about.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blogging Theology. Today, I'm delighted to talk again to Sheikh Hamza Karamali. You're most welcome, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Pleasure, Paul, always.
Great to have you back, as always. For those who don't know, Hamza is a traditionally trained theologian who specializes in arguments for the existence of God and the truth of Islam. He's the founder of Why Islam is True, where he trains scholars, imams, school teachers, and parents how to use rational arguments to show their students and children why Islam is true. He is releasing a series on the red heifers called The Truth About the Red Heifers That No One's Talking About on his YouTube channel, and I'll link to it in the description below. The first 2 episodes are out and more are on the way. Now, as Western governments all over the world seem to be restricting Muslim freedoms, he is releasing a theological response to Islamophobia called Unapologetically Muslim: How to Flourish as Muslims and Deal with Islamophobia in Secular Societies. And the link to those are in the description below as well. Now, the end of this month, the end of April, marks the Jewish Passover, and is rumored that right-wing Israeli groups are planning to slaughter red heifers at Al-Aqsa Mosque in the hope of fulfilling a Jewish prophecy. According to Jewish tradition, the ashes of a perfectly red heifer are needed for the ritual purification that would allow a third temple, and you can read about that in the book of Numbers in the Bible. There are fears that this could strengthen calls for the demolition of Al-Aqsa Mosque and escalate tensions in the region. So my first question to you, Sheikh, really is, what exactly is this red heifer sacrifice?
So it's in the book of Numbers, as you mentioned. It talks about this idea of a kind of ritual impurity Now, ritual impurity is something that we as Muslims are very familiar with, and there are certain kinds of ritual impurities that prevent us from entering mosques. So, if a Muslim he has relations with his wife, he has a wet dream, or a woman she has her menstrual period, then they become impure, and in order for them to enter into a mosque, they have to take a bath, a purificatory bath. There's similar rulings in Jewish law as well. But the red heifer sacrifice is about a special kind of impurity that the Jewish people, according to the Book of Numbers and the Mishnah and the Talmud, they enter into when they come into contact with death. So if somebody touches a corpse, or they're in the same room as somebody who's died, then they become impure and they become unfit to enter into the holy temple of Jerusalem, where
And I believe also it's because since the second temple, not only have been able to perform any of these things, so it's just there's like getting ready to, I believe, for the temple, because a lot of the sacrifices had to do with, if I'm not mistaken, like sins against the temple. I think that's how they said it.
The Dome of the Rock currently stands and the entire mosque complex. So in order for them to enter into that area, they have to purify themselves in a far more complicated way than Muslims need to. They recently take a shower. But they have to take the ashes of a perfectly red heifer and mix it with water. And this goes back to the Book of Numbers, where it's described there's a priest who is commanded by Moses to slaughter a perfectly red heifer and then take some of the blood from that sacrifice and sprinkle it in the direction of what was then the tabernacle, the tent that the Israelites.
Can I just pause you there? Sorry, just a clarification. This is the Book of Numbers, which is in the Pentateuch, the Torah, chapter 19 of the book. And I'll just read the first two verses. This is the ceremony of the red heifer, just so.
Let me check Numbers 19. Well, I can look it up too. Numbers 9. Yep, the water of cleansing. It's New International Version, I guess. There's quite a bit here. And I'll let me share this. We'll read this one together. So talking about Numbers 19. So the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, this is a requirement of the law. The Lord has commanded, tell the Israelites to bring you a red heifer without defect or blemish, that he has never been under a yoke. So it's pretty much that it hasn't worked. Never seen actual work. Before I remember my times. I remember this one as well. Yeah, so it's actually from been under a yoke. So we're looking, so Numbers 19, and then it proceeds talk about give it to Eleazar the priest. Is it to be taken outside the camp and slaughtered in his presence? Then Eleazar the priest is to take some of his blood on his finger and sprinkle it 7 times towards the front of the tent of meeting. While he washes, the heifer is to be burned, hide, flesh, and blood, and intestines. The priest is to take some cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet wool, and throw them into the burning heifer. After that, the priest must wash his clothes and bathe himself with water. He may then come into the camp, but he will be ceremonially unclean until evening. The man who burns it also must wash his clothes and bathe in water, and he too will be unclean till evening. A man who is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and put them in ceremonial clean place outside the camp. They are to be kept by the Israelite community for use in the water of cleansing. It is toward purification from sin. The man who gathers up the ashes of the heifer must also wash his clothes, and he too will be unclean until evening. This will be the lasting ordinance both for the Israelites and for the foreigners residing among them. All right, so that's from Numbers 19:1 through 10. So that's where this is at. All right, I'll make a note of that one. So that's actually where he's probably going to be reading from.
The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "This is the statute of the law that the Lord has commanded. Tell the Israelites to bring you a red heifer without defect, in which there is no blemish and on which no yoke has been laid, and you're to give it to the priest," and so on and so on and so on. You can easily just Google this. So it's an interesting chapter. And also just want to clarify one sort of technical point or theological point about being impure for a Western audience who may not quite get the connotations of it. It doesn't mean you're sinful. It doesn't mean you're in any way a wrongdoer, does it? If you're ritually impure. And it's important because some people think, Islam teaches that women are sinful or bad people because of this, and this. It doesn't mean that at all, does it?
No, it doesn't. No. Yeah. It's just a state of ritual purity that we need to enter into in order to do certain acts of worship. And there's other acts of worship that can be done even when somebody is ritually impure. But entering the mosque requires a level of purity. And entering this would apply for us as well, for entering the Dome of the Rock or entering the Al-Aqsa. But there's this special kind of impurity that's in the Bible that we don't have it in our tradition. We do have something about death that somebody there is a hadith that says that if you wash a dead body, then it's recommended to take to make a wudu, but it's not a requirement. But with this particular passage in the Book of Numbers, it says that anybody who comes into contact with death, which is going to be basically everyone at some point in their life, is going to come into contact with somebody who's died or proximity with somebody who's dying. Before they can enter the temple, they need to purify themselves in a special way, and that's.
So I wonder when it says death, is it just dead or whether they're dying, close to death? I wonder. That's something probably be nice to ask a rabbi about. But I didn't. I kind of expected the wudu after contact with dead body, or at least recommended. That seems to be only somebody. Well, I guess we don't see death. I guess in the same way, we don't see that such a impurity thing. So I know that a lot of brothers and sisters are going through some things out there in Palestine. May Allah protect them, and Allah guide them, and Allah help them.
What this passage in the Book of Numbers is talking about. That you get a perfectly red heifer, and you slaughter it, and it's supposed to be slaughtered in where you can see the temple. So it would be right now. It would be where the Mount of Olives, where you can see the Dome of the Rock, and then the heifer is sacrificed, and then there's some of the blood is sprinkled in the direction of the Dome of the Rock, and then it's burned to ashes. And after it's burned to ashes, it's mixed with some special water, and then that special water is what is needed to purify yourself to enter the temple. Now, for 2,000 years, this hasn't been important, because for 2,000 years, according to the Jewish people, the temple hasn't existed. So, and they haven't had a need to enter the temple. And in fact, Orthodox Judaism, Rabbinic Judaism, it said that you have to wait for the Messiah to come and rebuild the temple. So there isn't, Orthodox Judaism doesn't have this
yeah, and that's something. And there seems to be almost like two schools of thought on that one. Comes to Orthodox, that's what they're saying. they reject um, Israel, what they're doing is because you can't speed up the Messiah's return. Only the Messiah will come and rebuild the temple. Only the Messiah will come and actually bring the people there. Some are saying no, they have to be there before to start the process on there. So there seems to be two schools of thought on that part.
Commandment to go and rebuild the third temple. You have to wait for the Messiah and the actions of God to bring that about, and then the Messiah will come and he'll sacrifice.
Just to stress, so that's absolutely right, that this is the Orthodox Jewish position. This is not just a sect. This is the normative Orthodox Jewish position that that you can't really reestablish this until the Messiah himself comes, and of course the Messiah, in their view, has yet to come. Of course, we may differ about who Jesus, peace be upon him, was, but in their view, the Messiah hasn't come.
Yep. So they've been, for 2,000 years, it hasn't really been an issue because they have no temple to enter to, you don't need this purification. You don't need this purification process. So before the destruction of the temple, there was a priesthood. And the Jewish priests, they were the people who were responsible for administering the sacrifices and other rites that happened in the temple. And that priesthood, it ceased for all practical purposes, it ceased to exist since the destruction of the Second Temple. And then there's this phenomenon called Rabbinic Judaism, where the rabbis, they wrote the Mishnah, they wrote the Talmud, and this is where all the detailed prescriptions of Jewish law come from today. So this has been historically something that's in the books, but it's been very much in the books, and then they're just waiting for something to happen for it to kind of come back into practice.
Yeah. Now, there are right-wing Jews who want to revive those sacrifices, and some of their allies are actually Christians as well, oddly, who you think the Christians will not want to revive sacrifices anymore. And
but they want to because they think that's it's going to help them speed up Armageddon. Yeah, that's why. Go Christians.
There's even an institute called the Temple Institute that's dedicated to reviving that part of Jewish teaching in the Torah that hasn't been acted upon for 2,000 years, as you say.
Right. So this is a modern phenomenon, and it's an aspect of religious Zionism. There's a secular Zionist movement, but there's also a religious Zionist movement, and there's been a reform, a change in Orthodox Judaism, and there's a movement to actively take steps to bring about the Messiah.
Yeah.
And from this perspective, what they say is that we need to reinstate temple sacrifices first, and when we do that, that will bring about the Messiah that the Jewish people are waiting for. They pray for him every day in their prayers. They pray for the Messiah. It's part of their faith. So this has been gaining momentum. The Temple Institute, established in 1987, with the express purpose of rebuilding the third temple. And the thing that stood in their way was this red heifer, because you need a perfectly red heifer, and you need to slaughter it, you have to burn it in order to purify yourself so that you can enter the temple complex, you can worship there, you can rebuild the temple. So perfectly red heifer is really difficult to come by. And there's a Christian evangelical rancher in Texas. His name is Byron Stinson. He has a website, byronstinson.me. He has an organization, Build Israel. So he has, like many Christian evangelicals in America, he believes that in order for the second coming of Christ to be realized, the Dome of the Rock needs to be destroyed. A Jewish temple needs to be built in its place. And then, unlike the Jews, who believe that when that happens, there'll be a Jewish Messiah, the Christians, they believe that when that happens, there's going to be an Antichrist, an evil man who's going to come. And then there's going to be terrible wars and destruction. And then they'll be taken up to heaven. They'll be saved the destruction, something called the rapture. And then they'll come back down in the second coming of Christ. So they're literally, they want huge wars. They want many people to die. So and part of that is that the third temple needs to be rebuilt.
Yeah, I wasn't making it up. I mean, I know, like I really wasn't making it up. Yeah, they think that's they think they're helping the Messiah. They think that this is actually going to speed up the process, and that's why they're doing it. It doesn't really make any sense, but I mean, it is what it is. I can't make you can't make this stuff if you wanted to.
Built. So their agenda aligns with the agenda of the Temple Institute for different reasons. And it just so happens that there is a breed of cows in Texas called the Texas Red Angus, where it's actually normal to have cows that are perfectly red. So Byron, he helped Jewish rabbis in the Temple Institute locate these perfectly red heifers as babies, and he had it tested because there's mothers who've given birth to such perfectly red heifers before, and they need to stay perfectly red for 3 years until they're fit for sacrifice. Because if in the middle there's a blemish or there's some white hairs or some black hairs that appear, they become they're disqualified. So he located 5.
I heard that's really hard too. I wonder if there's like some genetic right now using some science, genetically modified stuff, because we know which hands are dealing with all this. I mean, it'd be kind of interesting to know.
And he shipped them to Israel, and they are in Israel, and they're waiting to be sacrificed. And that there was, the rumors were that they would be sacrificed during the Passover. The Temple Institute is preparing to revive the priesthood as well. So they have priesthood training sessions.
Because you've got to have the priesthood. That's one of the things that I was reading the book of Numbers, chapter 19. You should give the heifer to the priest Eleazar, and it should be taken outside, etc., and slaughtered. So heifers, you've got to have the priesthood as well, as you say.
Yeah, and so they've been preparing. They've been preparing for a very long time, and they have priests who are pure, who have never come into contact with death. So they've kept them in separate and isolation, and no entering into hospital wards. And they're young, but they've reached the stage, and they're ready to sacrifice the red heifer, and then the goal is to rebuild the temple. And then they do practice sessions where they reenact the commandments in the Torah about what happens inside the temple, because it hasn't been done for so long. So there's a revolution.
Yeah, everything have to use. They have to use whatever's on either the Talmud and the Old Testament, because they don't have nothing they pass down, because they haven't done it in millennia, So it'd be so interesting to see that. Like, I mean, just to see something like that, it'll be like, like watching something from the past.
The priesthood and the sacrifice of this red heifer, there's 4 or 5. They say one of them has been disqualified, candidates that are there. And when it's sacrificed, then that's the first step towards the realization of the mission to destroy the Dome of the Rock and build the third temple in its place. They say that they'll move it, they won't destroy it, but
Gosh.
Yeah.
Well, the Passover's almost over. Does the sacrifice have to happen now? I mean, presumably not, if there's no temple and no priesthood.
No, there's no requirement that this sacrifice happen during the Passover season. But it's good timing because the heifers are coming of age. They're reaching the right age to be sacrificed, and the Passover for both the Jews and the Christians who are supporting this is would be an auspicious time to do this. So for the Jews, the Passover is a celebration of their or a recollection of their being saved from slavery to the Pharaoh. And there's an event which is not in the Quran, but it's in the Bible. It says that it's in the Bible, the mission of Moses as he goes to the Pharaoh is to get the Pharaoh to set the children of Israel free. That's like the main theme. And the way that the events play out, it's played out as a battle between the God of Israel and the gods of Pharaoh. And the God of Israel defeats the gods of the Pharaoh. And part of that defeat is there's a series of plagues. There's 10 plagues that are mentioned. And the final one of those plagues is a plague where God, he comes and the God of Israelites, he comes and he slays the firstborn of every Egyptian household. And Moses tells the Jewish people to sacrifice a lamb or a goat on the evening before the Passover, and then to take the blood from this animal and to rub it on their doorposts. And then when the God of the Israelites he'll see this blood on the doorposts, and he'll pass over those houses.
Passover. That's the key thing. Is this where we get the term Passover from? It literally means to pass over something. In this sense, it's extraordinary. Yeah.
Yeah. So he'll pass over them, and then he'll leave their firstborns alone. But the firstborns of anybody who doesn't have that blood on their doors will be killed. So according to the Bible, that's.
I wonder how many people don't know this story. I feel like I've known this story my whole life. Story of Exodus, story of the Passover, the plagues. I mean, it seems to just be a part of my life.
That's what happened. And when that happened, then the Pharaoh said that, your God's really strong and powerful, and, I better let you guys go. So, so go.
That's a rough paraphrase, I think, of what he might have said. Yes.
Yeah.
You guys. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So he set them free. And then after he set them free, he changed his mind and he came after them with his armies. And then there was a drowning that happened. But the key thing that is commemorated by the Jewish people is the Passover, and they remember that this is when their God defeated the Pharaoh. That's the thing that they remember. So it's God giving them victory over their enemies after a very long period of suffering and subjugation. So for the red heifer sacrifice to happen during the Passover season, it brings all of those emotions with it. That it's a victory for the Jewish people. They've been waiting 2,000 years, and now they can, their God is on their side, and they will rebuild a third temple.
Yeah, I wonder how many truly, I just believe that, but it seems that Jewish people so split between they either don't believe in anything or they believe in the Old Testament. It's just strange. It's almost like they're caught. Like if what to choose from. Obviously, they're not going to choose any of this pagan religion. But it's like they demonize. Everybody's demonized Islam. So like, oh no, what you want to be like an Arab? Technically they're like cousins. Or like, oh, you want to be like the Jesus killers? Oh look, everything's so old. But here, we're Christians. We're hip. Yeah. Seeing the stuff that's going on in the churches. I don't know. It just seems like they're almost left with no alternatives. Even though I think they should, at a minimum, should at least just follow the Torah. At least they'll be worshiping one God of Abraham, Moses, and Isaac.
So that's it. It would be from that perspective a good time to do it. And for the Christian evangelicals, Passover is associated with the crucifixion of Jesus. So if it's the time when the Son of God died for the sins of mankind, then it would be an auspicious time for something to happen during this period that would herald his coming back to earth. So that's why in the minds of those who want this to happen, it would have been a good time.
Yeah.
But it can happen anytime. It doesn't have to happen during this time.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Gospels disagree about the date of the alleged crucifixion. The Matthew, Mark, and Luke have one date, and John has a different date, and that's an oddity in itself. But so clearly, Passover is a very important event for Jews and for Christians for different reasons. How do Muslims, though, make sense of it, do you think?
Yeah, so this is really important because most Jews and Christians don't realize that we actually commemorate the emancipation of the children of Israel from the Pharaoh. And it's part of our religion. The Prophet ﷺ taught us to do that. So when the Prophet ﷺ, when he came to Medina, there was a large Jewish community that was in Medina. And this Jewish community was an old Jewish community, probably from the time of the Second Temple. They left and they came to Medina because they were waiting for the final prophet to come. So they had biblical sources that we don't have available today. And based on that, they chose this place. And there were a couple of other places in the Arabian Peninsula that they also chose, but this was one of the places. And when the Prophet ﷺ came, he found them fasting on the 10th of Muharram, which is the first month, the 10th day of the first month of the Muslim lunar calendar. And he asked, why are they doing this? Why are you doing this? And they said that this is a blessed day. They said, هَذَا يَوْمٌ صَالِحٌ in Bukhari. He said, this is the day when God saved Moses and the children of Israel from the Pharaoh. And it says that Moses fasted that day. They say that Moses fasted that day. And so we fast that day too. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, famous saying, he said that we have more right to Moses than you do. And he fasted that day, and he commanded the Muslims to fast that day. So when the Prophet ﷺ, when he came to Medina, Ramadan had not yet become obligatory. It became obligatory the following year. In the first year, it wasn't obligatory to fast Ramadan, but the day of Ashura was an obligation. So it was the first obligatory fast in Islam, which was superseded by the obligation of fasting Ramadan, and then it became a recommendation. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said that anyone who fasts this day, he will have all the sins of the previous year forgiven. So Muslims all over the world, every year, they fast on the 10th of Muharram to commemorate their release from slavery. There's actually a dua as well, like that we say every morning. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said that whoever says every morning a particular prayer, it says, Allahumma inni ushiduka, Allahumma inni asbahtu ushiduka, wa ushhidu hamalat arshika, wa malaikataka, wa jami'a khalqika, annaka anta Allahu la ilaha illa anta, wahdaka la sharika lak, wa anna Muhammadan abduka wa rasuluk. Whoever says this 4 times, it means, oh Allah, I call you to testify that I bear witness that there's no God but you, and that Muhammad is your prophet. And I also call other things to testify, angels and other beings. Whoever says this 4 times shall have the reward of freeing a certain number of the children of Israel from captivity. Because the children of Israel, they were Muslims. So they were Muslims who were being persecuted.
And we said they were Muslims because at that time, there was no law yet. Right? All they did was submit themselves to Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a Muslim is somebody who submits their will to the Creator. That's why some Jews be like, I'm a Muslim too. Yeah. Linguistically, yes. But we believe more than that. We believe they follow Islam. which is just a religion of submission. That's all they did. But of course, they went back to their old ways. They were punished, blase, blase. But yeah, they were Muslims.
By people who were wronging them, killing their children, enslaving their women, doing terrible things to them, and we identify with them. So, but the event that we commemorate, and that's in the Quran as well, that again and again and again, it is the miraculous drowning of the Pharaoh, and it's not the Passover. And that's the thing that's mentioned in this hadith as well. And if you look at the Quranic narrative, it's in Surah Ash-Shu'ara. It describes how the children of Israel, they escaped from slavery. In the Quranic narrative, God revealed to Moses that escape with them secretly at night. Asri bi ibadi. Innakum muttaba'un. Go out quietly at night. You're going to be followed. So the scholars of tafsir, they say that the ancient Egyptians, they had some kind of a festival. They were heedless as this was happening, and so they made preparations and they fled. They left, and God tells them that you will surely be followed. And so the festival happened, and then in the morning it was discovered that all of their slaves are no longer there. And then the Pharaoh got really angry, and he had a proclamation. He said that this is a inna ha'ula'i la shirzimatun qalilun wa innahum lana lagha'idun, that these are just a small group of people and they've really made us mad. And then he sent people to summon his armies, and he gathered an army and he chased after them. And then there's a very, very powerful description of how the armies of the Pharaoh behind Moses and the children of Israel, and there's some body of water before them. And a number of the children of Israel who are with Moses, they say, Inna lamudrakun. They said, it's over. Like, we've been caught up. Like, we have nowhere to go. Yeah. And Moses, he says, Kalla. He says, no. Inna ma'iya rabbi. Verily, my Lord is with me, and he will guide me. And so then he strikes the sea with his staff. It splits open, and they go across, and then the Pharaoh follows, and they're drowned. And so this is the event that's commemorated. And if you look at how it's described in the Quran, the Passover actually doesn't fit, because the Pharaoh didn't say leave. They left secretly, and he came after them, and there wasn't enough. There's no firstborn sacrifice that's mentioned. There's no firstborn killing that's mentioned, which is it doesn't make sense. That you have these criminals who are killing your babies. They're killing every son, and so God comes and leaves the criminals alone and kills their babies. It doesn't, it doesn't kind of. It's not the message that the Quran gives.
No.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. People think, oh, that's just wrong on it. We don't believe that the prophets, who are supposed to be the best among us, do some of the atrocious things, all the way from using black magic to sleeping with their kin. Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. Then they're not. I mean, so it means anybody that can not do that, it's like already better than they are. Well, I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
So the day of the Passover is commemorated in this way, and I think that this is how it used to be. We have evidence from the Quran and Sunnah that in the religion of Moses, this is how it used to be commemorated, and it's more fitting to worship God by denying something to yourself and submitting to Him and lowering yourself to Him, than to celebrate that this is the day that God came and destroyed our enemies.
Yeah.
So that's how it's that's the meaning of the Passover for us, and I think that this is something that has to be communicated a lot more.
Thank you for that. I also wanted to ask about Surah Al-Baqarah, the second chapter of the Quran. Is also sometimes called the chapter of the cow or the chapter of the heifer. Interesting enough.
The heifer.
How is that related to the red heifer?
Yeah, there's a lot of people are making connections between the two, and so let me begin by just going through those verses. Let's go through those verses. So those verses they come in Surah Al-Baqarah, which is the longest chapter of the Quran. The second.
It's like 200 or something. So the second is, I believe, the second chapter.
And the chapter is actually named after these couple of verses because it's a distinctive event that's only mentioned in this surah and not mentioned in others. This is often the way that surahs get their name. They're identified with unique things that are only found in that surah. So in this surah, this is the only chapter in which the Baqarah is mentioned. Now, Baqarah in the Arabic language, it has at the end of it something that is sometimes a sign of some femininity. So we say for example, we say Muslim for a male Muslim, and we say Muslimah. You add a ta marbuta at the end for female Muslim. So people sometimes think that that's what's happening with Baqarah, but that's actually not the case, because the ta at the end of Baqarah is not for femininity, it's for singularity. And so you have Baqar, which means cattle, and Baqarah, which means a single head of cattle. So properly speaking, in the Arabic language, a Baqarah, it can be a bull or it can be a cow, even though it's popularly translated as cow. So a heifer is a Baqarah, but a Baqarah does not have to be a heifer. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the story, a true story that's in the Quran, it's about, it says that when وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِقَوْمِهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تَذْبَحُوا بَقَرَةً.
Which verse is that, Sheikh?
This is verse 67.
All right, thank you.
Verse 67. So
let's pull it up. Let's pull it up. All right, Surah Al-Baqarah. All right, so it's this one right here.
Verse 67, this is an exhortation. So the Quran is different than the Bible, because in the Bible often there's long historical narratives, but that are just historical narratives.
Yeah.
But in the Quran, everything, it has an exhortation. There's a purpose to it. So there's an exhortation that's being given here, and the children of Israel are being exhorted to remember the time when Moses said to his people that verily God is commanding you to slaughter a baqarah, a head of cattle, which could be a heifer, could be something else. So there is a background to this that is actually mentioned in the verses that come afterwards, and that's that there was someone who was murdered, and the children of Israel didn't know who the murderer was, and so they came to Moses and they said that there's a murder, unsolved murder, and we don't know who killed him. So what do we do? And the Prophet Musa, he said, verily Allah commands you to slaughter a baqarah. And so they responded. They didn't understand the connection. They said, well, there's an unsolved murder. Why are you telling us to slaughter a baqarah? And they said, are you mocking us? Are you making fun of us? Which here is, it's mentioned as to indicate a lack of reverence and submission to God, lack of reverence for his prophets.
Yes.
And God and the Prophet Moses were very patient. And then Moses, he explained its characteristics. He explained that it neither too old nor too young. And then they said, give us more details. And then they said, what's its color? And so he said that it's yellow. So in the Quran, it's yellow, not red. However, the scholars of tafsir, they mention that what's meant by yellow is something in between black and white. And in the Arabic language, the color of camels, which is kind of yellowy red, is also known as ahmar, which is red. So red and yellow, they are, with a reference to cattle and camels, they're close enough. So it could be the same. It could be the same color. So they're commanded to. So they were commanded to this. Every time they asked, they said, "Well, we don't have enough information, and so please be more precise." And so this is like it's like a child. I have a couple of children. So they all go through this phase when they you tell them to do something, and they know what it is that they have to do, but they say that, well, but is it like this or is it like this? And then you.
Yeah, I believe that. So this is on 69. They said, "Call upon your Lord, specify it for its color." He replied, "Allah says it should be a bright yellow cow, pleasant to see." That's on Surah Al-Baqarah 69. That's what he's referring to.
You say something else, and they say, "Well, is it like this or is it like this?" And so basically, what they're saying is, they're saying that, I'm really good, I'm a good person, and you're bad because you're not, and I'm not doing it, but it's not my fault, it's your fault. So it's that's the mindset that's being described here. And the scholars of tafsir, they say that the children of Israel, they shaddadu fi su'al, they were persistent and obstinate in asking questions. فَشَدَّدَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ, and so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He made it difficult for them. So all of these additional details that come every time that Moses mentions these details, all of these additional details, had they just complied in the first case and just slaughtered any cow, it would have been sufficient. But at the end, the details that were mentioned were, and this is why people make the connection with the red heifer sacrifice and this event in Surah Al-Baqarah. One of the details, it has to be perfectly yellow. Another detail that's mentioned is it has to be, it can't have been used to work the fields. So in the book of Numbers, it says that it has to be an unyoked heifer, which means that it has to just, enjoy life, just nothing else.
Life, yes. That'd be really
So they, and there's others that are mentioned as well. And so the scholars of tafsir, they say that the children of Israel, they searched for this perfectly red unyoked heifer, and they only found it with one person who sold it to them for a really high price. And so they had to buy it, and then they slaughtered it. They buy it and they slaughtered it, but they almost didn't do it because they didn't. They weren't willing to comply. And then after they slaughtered it, then Moses, he told them to take part of the slaughtered animal and strike the dead body with it. So there's no burning to ashes. To strike the dead body with it, and then the dead body, this is mentioned in commentaries, came back to life. It came back to life, and it identified who the killers were. And so this particular case of an unsolved murder was solved. And the Quranic verses, they continue and they say, كَذَلِكَ يُحْيِي اللَّهُ الْمَوْتَى, says this is how God will resurrect the dead, which I think is really significant, because there is a reminder of the resurrection and the afterlife, and an exhortation to remember the afterlife. And in the present New Testament, there's no mention of the afterlife. And you even had, I remember we were doing an event together, talking about Sadducees and the Pharisees, and there's this long tradition in Judaism of not believing in the afterlife as well. So and I think that's significant when you kind of put all the pieces of the puzzle together. I'll come back to that. But what this shows is that this event of, if it is a heifer, it doesn't have to, but if it is a heifer, if it is a red heifer, then the purpose in the Quran is to tell the readers that Moses came with clear signs from God, and you didn't submit to him. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is coming from with clear signs from God. Don't do that again.
Yeah.
Fear the afterlife and accept God's messengers and submit to him. It's not a purification ritual.
No.
So the book of Numbers is describing a purification ritual. There's no purification ritual here.
No.
The only thing is there's a mention of a heifer. So that's like one piece of information that we have. So we have the book of Numbers, we have Surah Al-Baqarah, and then there's the third passage that's in the Bible.
Yeah.
It's in Deuteronomy 21.
Deuteronomy 21. Okay.
So in Deuteronomy 21, it describes a case of an unsolved murder. And it says that, but it's actually not a case, it's a general rule. So the case in Deuteronomy, it resembles Baqarah, Surah Al-Baqarah, more than Numbers does. Because in Deuteronomy chapter 21, it says that if you find an Israelite lying dead in the wilderness, in between cities, and so there's a murder that's happened, and you don't know who did that murder.
Yeah. Then
what you do is you look at the closest cities to the person who's being killed, and the elders, the closest city, the city that's closest to it, it bears some kind of a responsibility. And so the elders, they come and they say that they bring a heifer, and this is what, there's a heifer here too, but they bring a heifer, but there's no requirement that it has to be red, but it has to be unyoked. They bring an unyoked heifer, and they kill it not by sacrificing it, but by breaking its neck.
Yeah,
which is a very painful way to die. So they break the neck. They break the neck of the heifer, and they say that they didn't kill this man. And when they do this, they are exonerated of all blame. So of the two passages, this one resembles the Quranic passage more, but
and this just shows that, see, this sacrifice is for a sin somebody might have unwillingly done. That's what the penance is for. It's not like I know them actually did it. It's for responsibility, so
there's a difference. There's a number of differences. Like, one of the differences is that it's a general rule, whereas in the Quran it was a specific case where and there was a miracle that happened. Somebody came back to life. And another difference is this is just a law, whereas in the Quran there's an exhortation. So it's just saying that if somebody's dead, you don't know who did it, then take a heifer, break its neck, and say you didn't do it with the closest city, and then you can move on with your life. So I think that like, if you kind of put all the pieces of the puzzle together, which I think that we need to do more of. So there's a lot of academic scholarship that examines the corruption of the Bible, and they try to make hypotheses about how that corruption happened. And there's a lot of useful information there, but there's a piece of information that we have that secular scholarship does not have, which is that we have genuine revelation from God, and that talks about those same events. It tells us about who Moses was. It tells us who the children of Israel were like, the Muslims of their time. And so you can, as a Muslim, you can piece together the pieces of the puzzle and come to you can make sense of it as a Muslim. And I think that's something that we need to do. We need to make sense of it. And because this enables conversations with Jews, with Christians, and I think that the picture that's painted is often, you can see that it's more moral, and it's more beautiful. It's actually based on evidence too. So if you put all the pieces together, then I think that the case in Deuteronomy is most likely a corruption, because the breaking of the animal's neck is not consistent with teachings that God gave to every single prophet. That when
I believe also that's very pagan. She's I believe it's a pagan, but I think it was a horse that broke his neck or something. Even Hinduism has a thing also where they take an animal to break his neck. You guys have to. I'm not gonna say how it is or what it is, but break his neck and it's used for fertility. That's all I'm going to say.
Whenever an animal is killed, it has to be killed mercifully, and it can only be killed for the purposes of eating. So killing animals for sport is not permissible. Torturing animals is not permissible. And so there's something off there. And then its resemblance to the Quranic narrative is telling you what it was originally like, and then it became like this.
Wow.
The red heifer sacrifice is it's not really related to Surah Al-Baqarah, apart from the fact that there's a red heifer. And I think in secular academic scholarship, they would say it's a priestly corruption. It's something that the priests there's a whole bunch of rules that they say that the priests probably put in after the fact. And I think that makes sense. I'm working on another episode on this. Inshallah, I'll kind of working through my thoughts. Maybe.
Yeah, I've heard about that as well. And that corruption, adding things to it, which is the reason why Esau had to come and kind of straighten them out, so to speak.
We can talk about it again.
Yes. So, about this series that you're making, what are the other episodes, and what are they scheduled to be about?
So the next episode is going to be about the Jewish priesthood and rabbinic Judaism, because we have.
No, probably. You know what? Probably you're gonna have to just keep doing shows about that. Yeah. That was Blogging Theology. Absolutely follow him. He's amazing. His dad was really good. Man knows his stuff. Man is a sheikh. He just doesn't call himself that. But yeah, he is. He's amazing. He knows a lot about Christianity and in Islam. He's an extremely well-learned man. You can see about all his books that he has. I'm pretty dumb. That's why I don't have any books behind me. Yeah, I'm a dummy. It's okay. It's okay, though. But yeah, I hope you guys liked that. Whoever was out there. Hope you guys enjoyed this little live stream. I'm going to keep doing more of it until eventually people show up and start commenting on the stream. It's going to happen. Inshallah, it's going to happen. Alhamdulillah. Oh, you guys enjoyed. Make sure you keep a like, comment, share. And until next time, folks. Peace.